The new McCarthy looks a lot like the old McCarthy. The old McCarthy abused political power to punish and demean and smear his political opponents. And the new McCarthy in Washington today is doing the same. And throughout this journey of vengeance, the three of us have chosen to stick together because this isn't about any individual committee assignment. This is about an institution where the Speaker of the House is using his power to go after his political opponents and to pick them off the field. And that's why we've chosen every step of the way to stick together. In my case, it's purely political vengeance. Speaker McCarthy is choosing to do something that Speaker Boehner, Speaker Ryan, and Speaker Pelosi did not do, which is with access to the same information with the claims that Speaker McCarthy has made about me, Speaker Boehner, Speaker Ryan, and Speaker Pelosi kept me on the committee. Chairman Nunes, with access to the same information to which Mr. McCarthy is making claims about me, never made a peep, allowed me to stay on the committee. The claims that Mr. McCarthy has made about me that I could never get a security clearance, Mr. Schiff was also briefed on and supported me staying on the committee because the FBI said 3 times, all I did was 2 things. I helped them over and over, and I was never suspected of wrongdoing. The Washington Post, in response to Mr. McCarthy's claims, gave him 4 Pinocchios, which is a whopper, the highest amount that they can give for one of the biggest lies that you could tell about somebody else. So this is purely about political vengeance. The cost is not only removing us from the committee. On the Intelligence Committee, the cost is not only breaking, shattering the most precious glassware in the cabinet, a committee that's always been bipartisan. The cost are the death threats that Ms. Omar, myself, and Mr. Schiff keep getting because Mr. McCarthy continues to aim and project these smears against us. Even though we have said publicly these smears are bringing death threats, he continues to do it, which makes us believe that there's an intent behind it. But we will not be quiet. We're not going away. I think he'll regret giving all 3 of us more time on our hands. But at the end of the day, our mission now is to restore the credibility and integrity of this institution of which the Speaker has so gravely smashed and destroyed. You're seeing now the fulfillment of Kevin McCarthy's corrupt bargain, a corrupt bargain with Marjorie Taylor Greene, somebody who declared on January 5, the day before the attack on the Capitol, that this is 1776, someone who cheered on the insurrectionists, somebody who, as we honor the police officers who were injured that day, she goes to the D.C. jail to make sure that insurrectionists are taken care of. The first time this person's ever cared about the conditions of a jail is when insurrectionists are inside it. She's going on the Homeland Security Committee. It's too rich that the day that George Santos, yesterday, admits to the Federal Election Commission that he defrauded them in his statement that he put $500,000 of his own money into the campaign. It's too rich that the day that he admits that he lied to a federal agency, that the ranking member of the Intel Committee is pulled off the committee. It's just too rich that as the 3 of us are about to lose our committees, this corrupt bargain also enables Paul Gosar, who depicted himself killing a colleague, goes on to a committee. And it's too rich that this corrupt bargain also includes $75 billion to defund the troops, defund the troops by $75 billion, a part of the promises that he made for this corrupt bargain. So we are caught up in this corrupt bargain. It doesn't feel good at all. It doesn't feel good personally, but that's not what's important. It doesn't feel good for the country and the Congress because they ran on inflation, crime, border, and they're not taking on any of that. This is the nonsense they're focused on.
Here, Eric Swalwell slams Kevin McCarthy in the aftermath of McCarthy refusing to seat him and Adam Schiff on the House Intelligence Committee and signaling that he'll block Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee. And, of course, Kevin McCarthy will debut his tenuous justification, which, frankly, isn't worth repeating. But the real reason is that he did it as retribution for the Democrats removing Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar from their committees in the previous Congress. In other words, McCarthy is doing Greene's bidding by punishing Democrats on her behalf. I'm not saying that Greene has Kevin McCarthy on a leash, but yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying. And let's just remember for a moment why Marjorie Taylor Greene was removed off of her committees. She had suggested that the Parkland shooting had been staged, cast doubt on whether a plane had actually hit the Pentagon on 9/11, signaled support for QAnon, and indicated support for executing prominent Democrats. She went onto Facebook in 2019 and liked a comment that said a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove then Speaker Nancy Pelosi. That's why she was removed off of her committees. So I get that Republicans are trying to make this into a tit for tat depending on your team, but this isn't just they remove one of ours so we're going to remove one of theirs. Greene was removed because, I don't know, maybe calling for the Speaker of the House to be executed is kind of disqualifying when it comes to members of Congress sitting on committees. Just, for starters. And Paul Gosar was in the exact same boat. The guy shared a video on social media depicting him killing AOC. I'm sorry, but what are we even doing here? Kevin McCarthy sees his members fantasizing about murdering Democrats and treats it like the usual tit for tat. Someone remind me when a Democrat has ever shared murder porn on social media. But until then, please spare me the false equivalencies. And just to be clear, McCarthy's move isn't even being received well within his own conference. Congresswoman Victoria Starts released a statement saying, quote, Speaker McCarthy is taking unprecedented actions this Congress to deny some committee assignments to the minority without proper due process again. As I spoke against it on the House floor 2 years ago, I will not support this charade again. Speaker McCarthy needs to stop bread and circuses in Congress and start governing for a change. Representative Don Bacon called it, quote, terribly corrosive. Nancy Mace said, I'm not going to support it. I try to be consistent in my values regardless of who's in charge. David Valadao said, I've never been a fan of that. Members are elected by their districts. To throw them off just seems inappropriate. And Annie Barr said, I don't think tit for tat is necessary here. In other words, just judging by these statements alone, it already doesn't look like McCarthy is going to have the support he needs to kick Ilhan Omar off of her committee, which, unlike the House Intelligence Committee, requires a full vote from the House. It's important to note that Swalwell brings up Kevin McCarthy's corrupt bargain. Remember, we still don't know all of what Kevin McCarthy promised to the hostage takers within his conference in exchange for their speaker votes during the election for speaker. Although we do know a little, and given how unpopular it is, it's not exactly a surprise that Kevin McCarthy is trying to hold it as close to the chest as possible. For example, we know that Republicans are going to introduce the Fair Tax Act and likely try to tie that bill to a debt ceiling increase. That bill would eliminate income taxes, payroll taxes, and the inheritance tax, of course, and instead, all of that would be replaced by a 30% national sales tax. That means every single item that you buy would be 30% more expensive. And so the tax burden would be shifted away from the wealthy, who pay higher taxes since it's proportionate to their income, to the working class. The entire scheme is a gift to millionaires and billionaires. Not to mention, it would send the deficit absolutely soaring, which I was told Republicans cared about. Guess they tend to make exceptions so long as the donor class stands to benefit. And so as far as these concessions made by Kevin McCarthy are concerned, they're clearly not popular, but as we've come to learn, what Republicans do in office has nothing to do with popularity and everything to do with whatever backroom deals they cooked up to help themselves, their party, and their donors. Americans don't care about Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell being kicked off the House Intelligence Committee. That's not for their constituents, that's for House Republicans. Americans don't want a 30% tax on every item sold in America, but that's not for their constituents, that's for House Republicans. Americans don't want Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid eliminated. That's not for their constituents, that's for House Republicans. On issue after issue, these Republicans are showing who they serve, and it's not the people who elected them to office. And so I hope Americans are paying attention now, when Republicans only have a majority in the House and can't actually advance their legislative agenda. Because if this is what Republicans will do with only a 5-seat majority and an already low approval rating and no mandate whatsoever, just imagine what they'll do if they retake the Senate or the White House. These are people who don't even pretend to work for the people who elected them. They're just power-hungry theocrats and autocrats looking to impose an agenda that no one asked for onto everyone else. So will Swalwell and Schiff end up on their committees? Likely not. Will that make America safer? Not a chance. We've got 9/11 truthers sitting on the Homeland Security Committee. We've got anti-vaxxers on the COVID-19 subcommittee. We've got insurrection sympathizers on the weaponization of law enforcement subcommittee. Republicans have already made it abundantly clear who they serve, and it's not their constituents, it's not the Constitution, it's not even our national security. It is themselves and their petty grievance politics and nothing more. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Marjorie Taylor Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Marjorie Taylor Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.